Good morning. It is Tuesday morning, November the 12th, 2013. I'd like to call to order the Department of Commerce and Insurance Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers Board to order, and I'd ask Ms. Johnson to please call the roll.
Wayne Hinkle,
Here.
Tony Highsmith,
Here.
David Neal, W.T. Patterson, Jane Gray Sowell, Robert Starkey,
Here.
Anita Taylor.
Here.
Mr. President, you have 4 members present.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I will inform the other board members that we have received a call this morning. A couple of at least one of our board members and maybe 2 are involved in traffic on the south side of town. I've heard on the radio this morning there's a major wreck on I-65 North, fatality involved, and there's an investigation, of course, going on with that. And so the traffic is very backed up in that area. So be mindful of those people that are involved in that tragedy this morning, and hopefully our other board members will be able to join us as our meeting progresses. I'd ask you to please look at the agenda, and the board will entertain motion to accept that agenda.
Motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion has been made by Mr. Hinkle, seconded by Ms. Taylor, to accept the agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Would ask you at this point in time to review the minutes for the October 8th, 2013 board meeting, if you will, please.
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Motion has been made by Mr. Starkey and seconded by Mr. Hinkle to accept the minutes from the October 8, 2013 board meeting as they've been presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries to approve the minutes. Next item on our agenda is titled Budget Close, Financial Position, Administrative Incentives, and Updates. To start that section of our meeting, I'm going to call on Executive Director Robert Gribble to discuss with us the Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers financial recap for the period July 1, 2012 to June 30th, 2013. Mr. Gribble, I would ask at the conclusion of your report if you will recognize and introduce the 2 other people who are on the agenda after your report, if you would, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Board members, the first thing I would like for you to look at, if you don't care, is the financial recap. If you'll go to your iPad and look at that. Under the what's called financial information up on the top shelf there. Okay, the first thing for us to look at is the financial recap for the fiscal year July the 1st, 2012 through June the 30th, 2013. Financial data was provided to the board's executive director by the Assistant Commissioner's Office for Regulatory Boards of the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance on October the 4th, 2013, for use in compilation of this report. The beginning balance for the board for July the 1st, 2012, we had a reserve balance of $812,674. The net revenue or net earnings for the fiscal year, that amount was $442,342, which gives us total funds available in the amount of $1,255,016. The expenditures for the board for July the 1st through June the 30th, 2013 was $371,015. Costbacks are cost allocations charged to the board. This comes from normally three areas, normally administration, legal, and investigation. In our particular case, we have no charges from investigations, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. But the costback allocations charged to the board from legal and administration was $169,621. So the total expenditures for the board, including the costbacks, was $540,636, which leaves a reserve balance on July the 1st of 2013 of $714,380. So that means that is the amount of money that the board has in a reserve account, in a quote-unquote savings account for a rainy day fund, whatever terminology you want to use. But that means that on July the 1st, 2013, the board had approximately $715,000. Now, if you'll go over to the second page, which breaks things down in much more detail, and I attempted to highlight, or did highlight, but it makes it very hard on your iPad to see that because iPads aren't in color. But if you'll notice down toward the bottom half, after you see where the grand total is, if you notice down below that, you'll see costbacks. And you can see that that's a little bit darker on the iPad. So those are the things that I've highlighted so to help draw your attention to it. Of course, this is a comparative on revenue and expenditures for 3 fiscal years, for fiscal year 09-10, fiscal year 10-11, actually 4 fiscal years, 09-10, 10-11, 11-12, and then our last year 12 and 13. And I'll be glad to discuss any of those numbers, or the assistant commissioner, or the person who comes with the assistant commissioner, Ms. Whaley. She is extremely familiar with this report as well. So either one of the three of us will be glad to answer any question you might have. But if you go down to costbacks, one thing you will notice is that previous to the last fiscal year, legal has been included in the administrative costbacks. So for 12 and 13, you see a costback there of administration of $108,169, investigation $0, and legal $61,452. So the administration has decided it's better to break that down further than what it had been in previous years. So you see a new item there for legal, and that's why that's highlighted, because that's a new item. Now, as far as investigation as to why that's $0 this year, in the previous years you see an amount in each fiscal year, but this year it's $0. The cases that the funeral board has had during the fiscal year 12-13 were extremely industry sensitive, I guess is the best way to put it, to where that you would need to be very knowledgeable about what the cases were in order to be able to do a proper investigation. So it doesn't mean that there hasn't been any investigative work done. It means that the field representatives, who are either funeral directors and embalmers, all three field representatives have a dual license. So those field representatives have done the investigative work because they're much more knowledgeable about the things to look for and to ask for when they go to do the investigation. The licensing revenue. As most of you are aware, our greatest revenue comes in on June the 30th of the even-numbered years. So this fiscal year that ended June the 30th this year is an odd number year. So our revenue does this. It goes up, it drops, and back up and peaks again. So if you look at licensing revenue You see in 09-10, that number was $958,740. 10-11 is $529,704. 11 and 12 it was $1,020,110, and this year it's $400,830. So if you compare back to the last fiscal year that ended in an odd year, you see that compares back to $529,000, and you think that's a substantial difference. Well, it is a substantial difference, and also this year, something new is administration has decided to break out the case and complaint revenue separately. So that $55,242, that means that was revenue generated from complaints, from civil penalties, or that were either through consent orders, agreed orders, or through formal hearings. That's what the $55,242 is. We cannot budget. When we do a budget, we cannot include that amount because it's an unknown number. We don't know what that number will be. It depends on the violations. It depends on what how severe the board thinks those violations are, and the amount of civil penalties the board assesses. So heretofore this year, that's been included in with just as licensing revenue, but this year it's broken out. Also, this state regulatory fee, we're required to pay the finance and administration $5 for each licensee that we have. So you can see that that's taken off. To begin with, there's $13,730 is paid to finance and administration. It's a fee that's statutorily required, and that leaves our net revenue at $442,342 for the last fiscal year. And again, each year that we have that ends in an odd year, we normally have a deficit for that year. So this year's deficit was $98,294. If you compare that back to 10-11, which was the previous fiscal year that ended in an odd year, that deficit was $102,558. So we've reduced the deficit, and then again, when you take the prior fiscal year reserve and deduct this year's deficit, that still leaves a positive balance of $714,380. Of course, each reg board is required to be self-sufficient. The board is required to collect enough in funds to pay the expenses. Now, even though every other year, because of when our number of licensees, the largest number of them renew, one year we have a large positive balance, and next year we do have a deficit. But what the Comptroller's Office and the legislature look at when they look at that and we go before sunset is they take that in consideration. So it doesn't mean because we had a deficit this year that we're automatically going to come up for sunset review. Now, if we had a negative balance and we had a deficit and we were adding to that deficit, yes, those things will cause you to automatically come up for sunset review. But basically, and of course up at the top you can see, I didn't want to overlook that, but I just wanted to draw your attention to those things there at the bottom. You can see that a large expense of our board is travel. That is for the almost entirely for the field reps to go and to inspect the establishments on an annual basis or to do this investigative work that we talked about. One thing that happens now is each field representative has a state vehicle that's assigned to them. It's a lease vehicle. It's my understanding those will be rotated out every 3 years, and you can see that has reduced the travel expenses for the board by doing it that way. Years ago, each field rep was paid so much per mileage, and that travel also includes overnight lodging and meals and incidentals when they have to stay overnight, because there are times when they go to areas to do inspections, they are required to stay overnight. If it's 50 miles or less from their field office, which is where their residence is, then they're required to go back home and spend the night. But if it's further than that, then we look at what's most efficient as to whether it's better for them to drive back or better to spend the night and us pay them for the lodging and meals and incidentals. Obviously, they don't get paid any meals and incidentals unless they spend the night. That also includes the travel for the board members as well. That's included in that when you come to the meetings. And that's the largest or one of the largest expenses that there are involving the board, except for salaries. Obviously, salaries are always generally the largest expense, and the salaries for the funeral board this year were $165,000. You add the longevity pay, and there's $89 in overtime and employee benefits of $108,150. Then you have payroll expenses of $278,433. Do you have any questions about any of those figures that we've talked about? Any of the cost backs, the balance, the deficit for this current year, but the overall reserve balance?
Is there a printout that shows unpaid fines, fees, or anything?
As far as unpaid,
I know you can't count your eggs before they hatch, but
okay. Keep in mind, when a complaint is presented to the board usually offers to settle that complaint by a consent order and a civil penalty. Technically, that's not an unpaid civil penalty. That's just an offer to settle. Now, what an unpaid civil penalty would be is if there was a formal hearing before an administrative law judge and the board assessed a civil penalty of, let's just say, $3,000 against me. I was the person that appeared before the board. You assessed a $3,000 civil penalty, hearing and cost, and it all came to $4,500. And I was supposed to pay that within 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, whatever the board said. And there was no payment plan, or if there was a payment plan and I didn't make my payments as I was supposed to. Those would be the unpaid civil penalties. That is substantially a lower amount than the complaints that the board has heard, assessed a civil penalty through a consent offer to offer to settle, because if the licensee doesn't accept that offer, then it's set for a formal hearing, because most of the time when the board hears the case, they authorize a formal hearing as well. But we can't count that as unpaid civil penalties. Yes, the unpaid civil penalties, we can get that information to you. It's going to be probably less than $1,000 or $2,000, Ms. Mosby. What would you think? It's going to be a small amount, isn't it?
I don't. I was just curious where that went in, if it was actually had a line item that showed it, and it doesn't.
It doesn't. No,
Okay.
it's not.
You don't need to. I don't need to know the figure. I was just had a question about that.
Other questions? We'll be glad to. The assistant commissioner, Ms. Whaley, will come in. So if I can't answer the question, I feel confident that one of those can answer it. So feel free to ask any financial. And I know the assistant commissioner is going to make a presentation to you, and you may want to keep your questions until he does that. But if you have something else over the information we covered, and we went over the financial recap and the revenue and expenditures is what we've covered. And with that said, Mr. Highsmith, the president, asked me to introduce the two of you when you got here and got ready to make your presentation. So I can tell you it's a pleasure to work with these people. Bill Giannini has been the assistant commissioner for regulatory boards for about 3 years now, a little over 2.5. And he is very involved in what happens in the process and what happens to the board. And Kimberly Whaley has been here longer than that, and she works with us on a monthly basis about the revenue and expenditures and budgets and things like that. And so I present to you the Assistant Commissioner for Regulatory Boards, Bill Giannini, and an accountant that works in his office, Kimberly Whaley.
Thank you, Director, Mr. President, Board. Appreciate you guys having us here. I do want to say, Kimberly, to call her an accountant, I know Robert didn't mean it this way, is definitely an underestimate of her talents and certainly of what she does here for the Division of Regulatory Boards. She is one of the reasons I think that things are going so well for us here, because she does so much more than what you've got in front of you. And I don't have time to go into all those things, but she is an asset to the department, and as well as Director Gribble too. If all of my directors manage things like Director Gribble, I wouldn't even have to come in. So, but we're very grateful for you all and appreciate your time. I'm going to try to run through this. I'm not sure if you've all had an opportunity to review it. Certainly, at any point you want to ask questions, feel free to do so. We are going to begin doing this annually. We want very much for you to feel like you understand your board revenue and where your money's going, what we're doing with the money that your licensees give to us, and that we are managing it responsibly. Has everybody got this there in front of them? You ready? I'm going to start at the top. And if you see here, this goes back 4 years, being the most recent fiscal year 12-13. Your regular salaries and wages were $164,598, which is just slightly above what it was the previous year. And in part, there was a 1.5% raise across the board given to the staff in July of last year. So that reflects at least part of that money. I'm going to drop on down to, again, you can see the travel was $36,439, which was less than the previous year, substantially less than the previous 2 years to that. I will point out that we went to leased cars, which reduced the cost to the program. We believe that it has been very beneficial having leased cars rather than paying mileage to your auditors. I will not go through the individual line items on your expenses. If you drop it down to the grand total of $371,015, again, that's right in line with the previous year and less than the 2 years prior to that. Go down to total expenditures of $540,636. You can see now we are breaking out your legal expenses so that you can see that, how much Mr. McDonough costs you every year. Your licensing revenue, and this is your down year. We fully anticipated it. It's $400,830. And if you drop down again then to net revenue, you'll see $442,342. Again, being a down year, that puts your fiscal year balance in a negative $98,294, which was not unexpected. And your prior fiscal year reserve, it was $812,674, leaving a balance of $714,380. Due to the good stewardship of your board office, they are managing your money very, very efficiently and effectively. Before I move on, did you have any questions about any of that? I also wanted to point out something that we're doing so that you can see is your case and complaint revenue. If you'll notice, just below licensing revenue, you've got $55,242. Years past, that's been incorporated into your total licensing revenue. We're pulling that out now so that you can see actually what the results of the complaint revenue is. Got number of licensees, you've got 3,670. 1,654. What is that? You guys are you're as consistent. 2000 this year you have 3,654. 2012 you had 3,670. 2011 you had 3,600. 2010 you had 3,374. That's as consistent as any program that we have here at regulatory boards. I don't know that there's another one that stays within that narrow range of licensees. That's almost hard to believe with the economy the way it's been. I guess you guys are in a business that your clientele isn't going anywhere. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about some of the things that we're doing here. We are buying a new licensing system, which is going to be used throughout the department, but certainly going to benefit the Division of Regulatory Boards and the Funeral Board. It is already been contracted. We are headlong into doing analysis with the staff and the software company to get that going. It is a great grandson of the system we have now, so which will benefit our staff because they won't have to learn a lot of new lingo. However, it will look entirely different. It will be a different look and feel internally and externally. We feel like it is. This system was bought in 1993 when Ned McWhirter was governor. So the system that we've been using. So if you all had to use your cell phone from 1993, you could imagine how well it would not work. So we're excited about that, to be able to look like to the public and to the licensees what they expect to see when they come to our website, to be able to interact electronically. We believe it'll result in efficiency, saving your program money, and hopefully, if not reducing, at least maintaining your licensing fees that you currently have. We've also implemented Notify, which is our electronic notification system. I've been polling all the boards. How many of the board members are signed up to Notify? Thank you, Mr. Heisman. Really encourage everybody to do that. It is the way that we will, in the future, we will keep you notified of things that are important to the board, board meetings, legislation, anything pertinent that we want to get out to your licensees or to you. You'll be able to receive it electronically. You'll have it there. I really encourage you all to sign up for that. Customer-focused government is been the talk of the division the last couple of months. The governor is very enthusiastic and about the customer-focused government initiative. He has charged every department to make sure that every single state employee goes through customer-focused government training. And we have, I think, done 6 now. I've been fortunate enough to participate in all of those. It's very exciting. Director Gribble can certainly tell you that it is. I've never seen the staff excited about going to a training. Generally, when they tell you you've got to go to a training, it's like, man, who did I make mad? So, but this has been received very well. I'm already seeing improvements in customer service just by putting it out there that we're going to be a customer-focused agency. We are going to realize that we are the only place that you can come to get a funeral license. We're the only place you can come to get an accountant's license. You can't go to it's not a difference between Kroger and Publix. Kroger makes you mad, you just go to Publix. We are the only place you can come to do business with the state of Tennessee in your respective field, adding to the obligation for us to do the best job we can possibly do, and at the least amount of cost and the least amount of time to get people to work, because every single license that we have here are people's livelihoods. This is what they're doing for a living. The governor has pushed it very hard. It is a key priority for his agenda, and it is working. It's going to work. He's giving us all the tools that we need to make sure that it works. New licensing system, all of these things play in. Lease car, saving you all money. All of these things result in making sure we give the best customer service we can to the licensees and changing kind of the perception of government. Now I'll be happy to answer questions.
Yes, sir. It is a great opportunity for us to interact with your office today and to discuss different things that might be on our minds or things you presented to us. To follow up on 2 things that you mentioned to start with about the electronic notification, we took that to our constituents at our last district meetings across the state. We meet in the east, the middle, and the west on a biannual basis, and we presented that to our constituents, our licensees at that time, and made them aware of that. Even had some information to pass out to show them how easy it was to go to that site and to sign up and to get involved in that. And we will continue to do that. If we could monitor to see, will we be able to monitor to see how many exactly have signed up?
Ms. Whaley can.
Great. And if
check
that
and
number
tell us.
does not seem to be meeting our expectations or your office expectations, if you will please let Mr. Gribble know that. He can hand that down to some of us, and we can discuss that at our district meetings as well and continue to encourage people to sign up. Under one of the financial issues that you mentioned, having to do with our license renewals and fees, we had a rulemaking hearing in November of 2012, and in that rulemaking hearing, one of the things that came forward was a reduction in licensing fees. That, to my knowledge, that rulemaking has not been officially signed off on. Part of that will be a reduction in fees. And as Mr. Gribble pointed out prior to your entering the room, in April of 2014 will be one of our larger assessments of fees to licensees. We have a down year and an up year every other year, and 2014 will certainly be an up year for license renewal funeral directors and bombers across the state. I think we have some, or I have some concern about the timeliness of that rule going into effect, that we could get that out to our constituents in their renewal notices reflecting that reduction of fees. Do you have any information on where we are on that process and if that will be able to go out on those applications?
I do not. I'm gonna defer to Benton on this, but I believe that, go ahead, man.
I was just going to say that we're still working with the Attorney General's office to address those rules, and so we've been working to get that matter resolved as quickly as possible, and it will hopefully be within the next month.
I would think if the applications were to be printed and made ready to go out, and then the rule go into effect, that could cause some unease within the licensees, and even, I guess, if some of them were to go ahead and renew their license, we would probably get into a refunding process, and that would be a burden on the accounting office, I would think, as well. So if we could, I think it'd be important if that could be put into place.
We can take a look at it. I will certainly can get with Robert and look at when the renewal notices would go out, and then kind of make an assessment where we think we are in the rulemaking process, because once it leaves the Attorney General's office, it then has to go up to the governor, and then it goes to the Secretary of State. So it's a process, and all of which are out of our control, how the speed with which they move through that system. So, but we certainly can try to determine, do we think it's likely that we will make it under the wire prior to your renewals? And I appreciate you pointing that out. I appreciate you bringing it to our attention. Also, thank you for sharing with your meetings across the state about the Notify. That's one of the things that we struggle with as a board or as a division, because we don't have any marketing money. It's very difficult for us to advertise some of the great things that we're doing that people can access and use, because we don't have a marketing budget, and because we are bound by law to use your money strictly for licensing. And so it's so helpful when you have a board and board members who aid us in going out and talking to the public as you make your association meetings, to let them know about things that we do have that are available. I'm very grateful for it. Any other questions?
Board members, are there other questions that you have for our visitors this morning? One thing that I would, reflecting upon the 4 years that I have served on this board, which is quickly coming to an end, the process in which we hear complaints, and as Mr. Gribble explained to Mr. Hinkle a few minutes ago, then this board has a settlement offer to the respondents, and whether or not that licensee accepts that settlement, we always, including in that settlement option, an authorization for a hearing. Over a period of time, there are a few cases in particular that I remember that have come before this board during my tenure, which has been almost a 4-year tenure now. And some of those I have not seen come to a completion as far as the hearing process is concerned. And I guess I have some concern about the timeliness of those moving through. When a 2 or 3 year period of time goes by, obviously the evidence is still there from the original complaint, and the respondents respond to the complaint. But I guess as time goes by, a 2 or 3 year period seems to be a ample time for these things to come to a hearing process. And during this last year, I'm not sure we've had even maybe one formal hearing, but I guess I have some concern is the effectiveness of our board and our office staffs and things going forward in closing some of these complaints, especially those that we give an authorization for hearing, so why those things wouldn't move forward on a timely basis. And other board members may have that same concern as well, I think.
I will, and I'll certainly let Benton stop me if I speak out of turn. I can give you my, I share your frustration. We share your frustration. And I think it is because of this way that the system is set up and having to rely on administrative law judge to participate in the formal hearings, it is unfortunately a supply and demand issue. And we are having discussions now. I see that, we continue to pile things on the heap, but we're never taking any off. The heap's getting taller and taller and taller. And we have to address that. I would encourage you to speak to your legislators about it, that, we need to look at alternative methods of freeing the system of these complaints. I can tell you from the division standpoint, there are only so many things we can do. We are trying now to encourage people to settle, to find ways to settle so that those cases don't hang around the system for 4 years. It's absolutely ridiculous that a complaint hangs around longer than your term. We absolutely share your frustration with that. We only get a certain number of dates a year from the Secretary of State for the ALJs, and we have to spread those out over 24 boards. It is very frustrating, and we pay our way. We're not asking for welfare or free services. We pay each time we have those hearings, and we still can't get the enough to satisfy the needs that we have. And as we continue to grow the number of cases, and we're not depleting it ever, we're going to run into something like the federal deficit. That's the way it's headed.
With every month, we see a list of complaints that come before our board, sometimes 15, 25, or 30. Also every month, Mr. Gribble provides us with a disciplinary action report that shows those that have come to completion.
Yes, sir.
And it seems like we're getting further and further behind all the time, when it would appear that there should be some equality in those two numbers, or balance in those two numbers, things coming in and things being resolved at the end instead of
It's a broken model. It will not sustain itself if we get to a point, because and again, your case begins to erode over 3 or 4 years. People disappear. People get out of the business. And so there are lots of good reasons why we shouldn't allow these things to hang around, and why we hope to seek some relief, either legislatively through the Secretary of State's office or a combination of both. And certainly your influence and discussing the issue with your legislators and people that you are close to can only help us in trying to find an alternative solution. Because right now, today, aside from the things we can do internally to encourage people to settle rather than go to a formal hearing, there is nothing else we can do. So,
Is it possible to do like in the business world, maybe once it goes to the formal hearing, maybe not have that terminology? It would go, before it goes to a formal hearing, maybe a mediator. We have attorneys that are mediation attorneys, to where maybe a board of 3 people sit on it or something, and you try to bring the people forward without a judge. Let's just talk backwards and forth. What can we do to settle this? Is that possibility that something could be added like that before it gets to step 3, you know?
Certainly, I think it could be added, and Benton will correct me. I don't believe right now in the statutorily we could do that.
We can do as much as we can to meet with the parties and to try and reach an agreement with the parties and their attorney. But as the assistant commissioner said, I mean, our hands are kind of tied as far as what we're currently allowed to do. But I can tell you that we do everything within our ability to try and get these cases settled prior to going to a formal hearing.
Now, prior to a formal hearing, certainly we could
Sure.
do that and try to work to some agreement. And we are trying to do that more often to keep from adding to the stack. But
Other questions or comments? I must say also in your presence, in the 4 years that I've had the opportunity to serve on this board, that I have always found this office, Mr. Gribble, Ms. Mosby, and Ms. Johnson has come on board during my tenure, this office to always be very professional, very accommodating, very informative, and I commend this office staff to you, highly commend them to you.
well, thank you. You are not sharing any great secrets, but I appreciate you saying it nonetheless. You have a great staff. We are very fortunate. Robert's very fortunate to have the staff that he has, and I'm very fortunate to have Robert. And you guys, I see boards and commissions all over state government, and you have an exceptional group of leadership in the funeral board, and the attorneys as well. They do a great job. And you guys have some complicated issues. I mean, you really do. As far as the boards and commissions that I have in my division, you are one of the most complicated ones. And because of that is greatly diminished by the good leadership that you have. I wanted to also thank you for your service. I probably will not see you again until you have left the board, but we are very grateful for your service. People think that board members, once you get on a board, you're going to fat cat dinners, and if they only knew what you do, it truly is a sacrifice, and it truly is a public service to serve on any of these boards, and we're very grateful for your service.
You have that confused with utility boards and things on a local level.
Which board is it? I want to get on it.
Well, and as I said, we're going to try to do this every year. We want you to know where your money is going and what we're doing with it, and to be available to you to ask questions about the money and any observations that you have, things that, as with I am grateful to know that you noticed that you've got cases that are older than they should be, that they shouldn't stay in the system this long. It is a systemic problem, and it's not explicit to this board. It's across the division. Frankly, I presume it's across state government with these kinds of cases, and we've got to address that to find some way. So we want to have a dialogue with you and be available to you to answer any questions you ever have, and to make sure you're never out at the plaza or and somebody asks you a question about your board. We want to empower you with as much knowledge as you can, so when you do get asked about, hey, how's your board doing, you can say with authority it's doing great. Thank y'all.
Thank you
Have
again.
a great day. Be careful.
Ms. Johnson, will you let the record show, please, that Mr. David Neal and Ms. Jane Gray Sowell have entered our meeting during the Assistant Commissioner's presentation, and they are now a part of our board. Mr. Neal, Ms. Sowell, welcome this
I
morning.
bet I know where he's been.
Sitting in traffic.
Okay. All right. Chair will now recognize Benton McDonough, Assistant General Counsel for our legal report. Give everybody just a moment to get to the right page, please, including myself. Everybody to the legal report. I believe they are. Counsel, if you'll take charge, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first complaint is complaint number 2013-011-141. Complaint number 2 is case 2013-011142. The complainant states that on May 26, 2013, a local radio station ran an advertisement for respondent number 1 and number 2 offering a 10% discount on pre-need contracts. The complainant states that when they reviewed the general price list for the respondents, the funeral plans exclude the basic services fee. However, this does not add up to a 10% discount, just 7.56% to 8.32%. So the complainant believes this to be false advertising. The complainant also believes the advertisement failed to include an itemized listing of each and every item, procedure, or service along with the price of the item. The complainant states that the general price list lists a charge of $225 for the grave service and funeral equipment. However, on the outer burial container price list, it is not stated clearly whether the consumer is required to purchase this service, and it does not state that it is included in the price of the vaults and grave liner, making this an additional charge that the 10% discount is offered on and reduces the amount of the discount, creating more misrepresentation. The advertisements do not say whether the discounts are offered for both funeral and cremation plans, but the complainant assumes that the discount applies to both. The complainant states that the discounts offered on cremation packages come nowhere close to 10% in discount. In response, the respondents met with the radio station manager and found that an old radio advertisement was played over the radio rather than the current advertisement that was supposed to play. The station manager provided a letter admitting this event. As for the general price list, the respondent states that the field representatives have approved their general price list and found no prior violations. The respondents took action after receiving the complaint to make sure that the word discount was replaced by savings. Furthermore, the respondents state that the Tennessee law is not clear regarding how much itemization is required when the advertisement is on the radio with a very limited amount of time. Respondents believe that they were not misleading the public with the 10% claim, as the consumer must receive a copy of the general price list when meeting with the funeral staff to make funeral arrangements, and the plans all provide for a 10% savings once the 10% basic service charge is subtracted from the particular plan chosen. As for the cremation plans, the advertisement only references funeral plans and not cremation plans. Therefore, the advertisement only applied to funeral plans. Finally, as for the $225 for grave service and funeral equipment, the respondents state that they do not state the price is included in the price of vaults and grave liners because they are not, and this is not an additional charge upon which the 10% discount is offered, but rather an incorrect mathematical hypothesis by the complainant who assumes things that are not stated in the general price list. We found a history for respondent number 1 of 2 open complaints and 2 closed complaints, as well as 1 dismissed complaint. And then respondent number 2, we found a history of 1 closed complaint and 1 open complaint, and we are recommending a letter of warning in both cases.
I'm confused here. You know, I can see all this, but it's illegal to give a discount on a prearranged funeral in the state of Tennessee. It looks like that should be more of an issue than the radio complaint.
It is, and I believe from what they were stating was that that was an old advertisement that was never meant to be aired in the first place, and that the discount would be for packages and not necessarily.
But it's always been illegal to discount a pre-need funeral. So the wording in the complaint was wrong, period.
I understand that, but the advertisement was not meant to ever be played now. That was an old advertisement that was, I believe, aired years ago, that for whatever reason made its way into the airtime on the radio station.
Whoever wrote the ad gave them the information from the funeral home for the old ad. Still was discounting a pre-need funeral, which is illegal.
Well, I believe what the respondent said in the case was that they were providing savings on a package for the funeral consumer in that case, and I believe that they were offering the discount on both pre-need and at-need. It's not.
Whether it's new or whether it's old, it's illegal.
It's not illegal to provide a discount on an at-need plan,
But this is pre-need.
but if it's the
You
same,
said or.
I said if
or.
it's the discount on both pre-need and at-need, then you're allowed to do that.
Do
If
what
they're offering
now?
the same, they're offering the same discount on pre-need and
You
at-need.
cannot do that.
Yes.
It's illegal.
You're
You
offering-
cannot offer,
You're offering the same price on pre-need and at-need. That is allowed.
If somebody
but you
comes,
cannot give a discount on a pre-need funeral.
period.
As long as the price is the same pre-need and at-need, it's not considered a discount in Tennessee, and therefore it's not illegal to provide the same price pre-need and at-need in that case.
Okay, I give a veteran 10% discount at need, but I got written up because I gave it to him, not 10%, but a $300 discount. I give it to him at need. They came in and prearranged a funeral, and the counselor gave them the $300 discount pre-need. It was written up, and I was fined. Now, what's the difference in what you're saying? I'm missing here somewhere.
What I'm saying is if you offer the same price pre-need and at-need, then it's not considered a discount on pre-need.
Well, I was offering it. Why was I considered discounting then?
I'm not addressing that complaint currently at this time. We're talking about this specific
Well, I
complaint
mean, it's the
right now.
same scenario. It's a discount. If you give the same discount, are you saying that if I give a discount on at need, as long as I give the same discount pre-need, that's legal?
Saying if it's the same price pre-need and at-need, then it's not considered a discount.
Why are you giving a discount if you got the same price for both of them?
And it's not considered a discount for pre-need if
Why
it's
would you
pre-need and
advertise
at-need.
it as a discount then? If it's the same
I'm
price.
saying if it's the
as-
same price, it's considered to be legal at that point if you're offering the same price for pre-need and at-need.
Somebody has, a family member has somebody die, and they walk in our funeral home today. And they've only got a certain amount of money to deal with, that they can bury their family member. We can price it any way we want to,
At-need, yes, ma'am.
but it's not considered, we don't say discount so-and-so. We're just gonna help this family out and do it for what they've got to do it for. There's nothing wrong with that. And we don't say we're giving you a discount because John Blow coming in next week. So, well, you did so-and-so and so. Well, we did that to help somebody out. But that's not considered a discount. We can price it any way we want to help somebody. But if we cannot offer a discount on a funeral pre-need of any kind, whether it's the same price as it would be at need, because we don't have an at need. There's no such thing as an at need discount unless you just do it at the time.
Mr. President.
Am I right or wrong?
Wait, Scribble.
One thing I think that might be worth considering is, of these two closed complaints, one of them has to do with offering discount on prearranged
I was just reading that, Mr.
packages.
Scribble. Yes, sir.
So this old ad, even though it was an old ad, it's been previously addressed by this board as far as what action to take by it. And I think that that's probably, of course, the council can speak for himself, but I think that's why his recommendation today is a letter of warning instead of any type of disciplinary action, is because that particular ad that ran, it appears by admission of the radio station management that it ran in error. It was not authorized or directed to be run by the funeral home, but yet it was on the shelf and they pulled it and ran it on the radio. And even though it may not be correct, it may be in violation, it's an ad that ran through no fault of the funeral establishment themselves.
That's correct.
Motion to accept council's recommendation on
Second.
respondent 1 and 2.
Motion has been made by Mr. Hinkle and seconded by Mrs. Taylor to accept council's recommendation. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh,
Ms. Johnson, would you do a roll call vote, please? For
Wayne
Ms.
Hinkle.
Mosby, I'm sorry, which one of you all will be handling roll call votes today? Okay. Yes, sir.
Sal is voting contrary to the conclusion of the matter, if you want us to.
Let's call a roll, please.
Wayne Hinkle,
I'm voting yes.
Tony Highsmith,
No.
David Neal,
Yes.
Jane Sal,
oh,
Robert Starkey,
No?
Anita Taylor.
Yes.
All right. Three noes and 3 yes.
There are 3 noes and 3 yes, so it's
Okay, Hinkle voted yes, Highsmith voted no, Sal voted no,
Robert
Starkey,
Starkey voted no.
Taylor, yes. What about Mr. Neal?
Yes.
I think the motion fails, would be my understanding. If,
Motion fails for the lack of a majority,
but who,
correct?
wait, that's only, there has to be 4 vote one way, nobody passed.
There's only 6
Half and
board
half.
members.
Mr. Patterson is absent.
Okay.
I was trying to do the math myself and counting. Mr. Patterson is absent.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, vote Mr. Patterson there, and he voted yes.
So, complaint, motion fails for lack of majority, so complaint 1 and 2 is still open for discussion. Is there any further discussion?
Again, I'm going to make my same recommendation as I made before, is based on Mr. Gribble and our attorney's advice, not necessarily advice from Mr. Gribble, but recommendation from our attorney on item number, or respondent 1 and 2 should receive a letter of warning.
Does that come in the form of a motion?
That's in the form of a
Which is
motion.
the same motion we just had.
Yes, sir.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion is made by Mr. Hinkle and seconded by Mr. Taylor to accept council's recommendation upon a second review of item number 1 and item number 2. Ms. Johnson, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. President,
I'm sorry, Mr. Gribble.
I'm not sure, I know Robert's rules of order that well. You may have to have a motion to reconsider before you have another motion, I'm not sure.
Making a motion to reconsider.
And a motion to reconsider may have to pass by 2/3 majority. I'm not sure. I'm not the best parliamentarian there is.
I think you're exactly right, Mr. Gribble. 2/3.
So at this point, we have a motion to reconsider, and that would be to reconsider the complaint from the get-go, not from any other motions that have been had, but to review the complaint and the respondent's answers from the beginning. That motion to reconsider has been made. Is there a second to reconsider?
Second?
Motion is made by Mr. Hinkle, seconded by Mr. Starkey to reconsider. All in favor of reconsider, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is, information is now back on the table. My suggestion would be for somebody that voted in the negative to make an alternative proposal in order to move things forward. The letter of warning failed for lack of majority, so we've got to move off of that point from the letter of warning. Is there another recommendation to come forward?
hey, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Howard.
Are we allowed to consider the former complaints and the content of those former complaints?
There is a brief description of the formal complaints that is before us there and the outcome of those complaints.
Are we allowed to take those into consideration?
Absolutely.
You
It's,
can
it's
consider the
information.
previous history.
Yeah, but the
Well,
history.
based on the history of this, the respondent 1 and 2, and the content of those complaints and the outcome, I move that there be a $500 civil penalty and opportunity for a hearing.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
if I may, I would just like to make it clear, though, that if the board's going to base its decision on the previous history of the respondents in this case, I mean, basically, to assess a civil penalty of $500 is going to be punishing them for something what they did that's already been addressed in a previous complaint. And so the reason we provided the letter of warning was because we felt like it was not their fault that the advertisement or the advertisement was run on the radio station. That was the radio station's fault. They placed a advertisement on there that was not intended to go on the air, and it was something that was already addressed in a previous complaint. And so therefore, if the board were to assess a civil penalty in this case, you would basically be punishing them for something that happened that they've already been punished for prior. So I just wanted to make that clear before the board makes its decision.
Apparently, the other hasn't been very effective.
In April of 2012, when there were discounts on prearranged packages and cremation packages, and there was a letter of warning sent out there, I think, Ms. Sowell, that's what you're referring to?
Yes.
It says a complaint states that on May 26, a local radio ran an advertisement for respondent 1 and 2 offering a 10% discount on pre-need contract. You know. Now, anything below that is just trying to saying what they actually do and don't do. I mean, to me, the thing we're addressing here is they ran an illegal advertisement offering a discount on a pre-need contract. I don't care if it's 7.56, 8.3, 9, or 10, it's illegal. And if you can't take into consideration what they've done before, but as much as a year ago or 2 years ago, a similar ad was run. And as far as I know, it's been illegal to give discounts on pre-need funerals for a long time, hasn't it?
Want to make a motion.
There's a motion on the floor by Mrs. Sowell for consent order with a $500 civil penalty and authorization for a hearing. Is there a second to that motion? A second to the motion that Ms. Sowell has on the floor. Motion fails for lack of a second.
Am I correct that we cannot reconsider the letter of warning?
I believe you can. I just believe Mr. Highsmith thought another member should bring another idea forward just because it failed the first time. But I believe you can go back and bring it forward again.
Okay. I make a motion, and I know I'm not the person supposed to be doing this, but I make a motion to accept council recommendation for respondent number 1 and number 2, a letter of warning, based on the fact that it was, under our understanding, it was a piece of advertisement that was not supposed to have been played anyway.
Motion on the floor to issue a letter of warning to respondent number 1 and respondent number 2.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Neal. Motion was made by Mr. Hinkle, seconded by Mr. Neal. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Complaint number 3, counsel.
Number 3 is case 2013017321. An employee who is the complainant of this case is of the respondent states that they worked for the respondent for 13 years. In June of 2013, the complainant states that they were locked out of the establishment. Then in August of 2013, they were asked to lend their knowledge and assistance for another service. Then the complainant was informed after the funeral service that their services were no longer needed. The complainant filed with the Department of Labor and Workforce for back wages and money owed for expenses. The complainant stated that they worked for the respondent for 13 years and were not paid hourly or minimum wage. The complainant believes they increased business for the respondent and that they were out of town and received a death call that made the business an additional $6,000. The complainant believes that they are owed $2,350 for paint supplies and overtime wages in this case. In response, the respondent believes that no one is out to get the complainant and believes that the complainant has psychiatric issues that need to be addressed. No money is owed to the complainant. In fact, it appears that the complainant owes money to the respondent, as there have been a number of charges on the company credit card for personal use. The complainant used company vehicles without permission, but respondent never filed any claims against the complainant. The complainant started officially working for the complainant the complainant started working officially for the respondent in 2010 and did work as needed from 2004 to 2010. At no time did the complainant embalm any bodies, as this person does not have a funeral director's or embalmer's license. Duties included transporting families and assisting with funerals, manual labor around the funeral home, servicing funeral vehicles, and the complainant may have recommended the establishment to members of the public, but did so on their own accord. The complainant terminated their own employment on June 10th, 2013, and the locks were subsequently changed on July 2nd, 2013. The respondent provided numerous letters of support from local funeral directors stating that this is an unfortunate turn of events and that the complainant's health has declined in recent years, leading to dementia, and the complainant suing numerous friends after they attempted to help the complainant in this case. We found a history of 3 closed complaints, and we're recommending that this case be dismissed.
Motion to accept council's recommendation.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Taylor, seconded by Mr. Hinkle to accept council's recommendation. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Number 4 is case 2013-017961. On August 2nd, 2013, a field representative conducted a routine inspection of the respondent establishment. The funeral establishment license expired on April 30th, 2013, and was not renewed until June 28th, 2013. From May 1st, 2013 through June 27th, 2013, the respondent arranged or conducted funeral or cremation arrangements for 8 deceased individuals. Also, the direct cremation with alternative container must be included on the general price list as required by the FTC. We received no response in this case, and we found a history of 1 closed complaint, 1 dismissed complaint, and 3 currently open complaints. In this case, we're recommending a consent order with a $1,000 civil penalty plus $250 for no response, for a total civil penalty of $1,250 and authorization for a hearing.
Make a motion to accept council's recommendation.
That goes back to the 3 open complaints again, from 11 to 12 to 13. So just keep tacking it on then.
Yeah, I mean, as the assistant commissioner instructed earlier, I mean, really,
Hands are tied.
our hands are tied, and as he said, our schedules are based on what dates are allowed for the administrative law judges, and also schedules for our attorney and their attorney and any number of things. I mean, the best thing we can do is to keep providing these inspections and provide the inspection reports, and we're trying to get the cases moved as quickly as possible.
Second.
Motion has been made by Mr. Starkey and seconded by Mr. Hinkle to accept council's recommendation. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Number 5 is case 2013-018-031. On August 21st, 2013, a field representative conducted a routine inspection of the respondent establishment. The decedent, who died on August 17th, 2013, was embalmed, dressed, casketed, and her service was conducted on the evening of August 20th, 2013 in the funeral chapel. Graveside services were to be held on August 21st, 2013 at 10 a.m., and the field representative arrived at 8 a.m., found no family members present, and found that the body lacked an identification device, and this is actually a repeat violation from 2012. Also, the current license for the crematory used by this establishment was not available for inspection, and the cremation authorization form for one decedent was not signed by a licensed funeral director. Also, the statement of funeral goods and services selected of the files reviewed, the reason for embalming was not completed on 2 contracts. This is also a repeat violation. In response, the respondent put a new system in place requiring all removal personnel to place a permanent ID on all individuals that are brought into the funeral home. The new system should prevent any further repeat violations. The respondent has stressed the importance of making sure that the reason for embalming is clearly stated on the statement of funeral goods and services selected, and this violation was a mere oversight, and the respondent was not trying to mislead the public. Furthermore, respondent contacted the crematory to ensure that they do have a copy of the current license on file, and the licensed funeral directors have been told the importance of signing all cremation authorization forms prior to filing the decedent's folder. We found 3 closed complaints, 1 open complaint, and 1 dismissed complaint in this case, and we're recommending a consent order with a $750 civil penalty and authorization for a hearing.
Still has the $1,100, just plus a $750 for two open complaints then.
Motion to accept council's recommendation.
Second.
Motion been made by Mr. Hinkle, seconded by Mr. Neal to accept council's recommendation. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
6 is case 2013-018-091. On July 29th, 2013, a field representative conducted a routine inspection of the respondent establishment. On the pre-arrangement contract of one decedent, a charge was specified of $2,500 for basic services of funeral director and staff. The general price list in effect during that time listed the same service at $2,000, leading to the respondent overcharging the consumer by $500. The crematory license for the crematory utilized by this respondent was not available for inspection. Also, on the casket price list, the respondent uses the catalog form in lieu of a casket selection showroom. 10 caskets being offered in the catalog for sale to the consumer need to be added to the casket price list. Under the Batesville, it's the Golden Sand 18 gauge. Under the Aurora, it's the Hermitage Hickory, the Marquette Mahogany, Silver Hammertone, the Frontier Pine Flat Top, the Light Copper 18 gauge non-sealer, the Southern Pecan, the Fremont Solid Poplar, the Urn 2 Cherry, and the Imperial Solid Poplar. In response, the respondent apologized for the error and oversight in overcharging the consumer by $500 as they copy the contract from another establishment verbatim. An updated license was supposed to be faxed to the respondent after each inspection, as respondent was allegedly placed on a mailing list. However, this obviously did not occur, and the respondent has implemented in-house controls to make sure that this does not occur in the future. As for the casket catalog, the book had gotten out of order and some caskets were missing. This problem is being corrected by limiting the number of caskets in the catalog. We found a history of 8 closed complaints in this case, and we're recommending a consent order with a $500 civil penalty. Also, in the consent order, or on the letter to the individual to advise them that they should probably refund the $500 to the consumer who was overcharged, and also authorization for a hearing in this case.
Is there any way that we can find out at a later date if that $500 had been refunded or has been refunded?
Yes. Usually what we do in this situation is that we'll ask them to provide verification of that, or if we don't receive any, then we'll contact the individual whose name, the family of the individual whose name was on the contract, and find out whether or not that money was refunded.
That becomes a different charge if it's not refunded, correct? Misconduct?
It can.
Unprofessional?
It can, but in this case, I mean, we're already citing them for that at the time. There's nothing that we can do as far as collecting the $500 that's been overcharged to the...
We cannot collect it. The board
Right.
doesn't have authority to collect it, but I just wondered if, never mind. Motion to accept council's recommendation.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Hinkle, seconded by Mr. Starkey to accept council's recommendations. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Number 7 is case 2013-018-101. On August 19th, 2013, a field representative conducted a routine inspection of the respondent establishment. The statement of funeral goods and services selected could not be produced in the correct proper size 8.5 by 11 inch size paper at the time of inspection. Also on the casket price list in the selection room, one casket called the Blue Mist was being offered to the consumer at a price that was inconsistent with the casket price list. Also on the casket price list, 8 caskets in the casket selection room were not listed on the casket price list. That was the Primrose 20 gauge, the Polaris 20 gauge, the Revere Silver, the Granite, the Gemini White and Pink, the Gemini Silver, the Merlot 18 gauge, and the Imperial 18 gauge. Also, the inspector found that the reason for embalming was not completed on 4 contracts found on the Statement of Funeral Goods and Services selected. As for the reason for embalming, the respondent states that their manager was a poor manager at the time. However, the current manager is aware of the importance of completing the Statement of Funeral Goods and Services selected completely, especially the reason for embalming. As for the 8 caskets, respondent had a current and correct casket price list with those caskets on it on their computer and unknowingly had not accessed them at the time of the inspection. Respondent has since made the correct casket price list available to consumers. As for the letter size Statement of Funeral Goods and Services selected, the respondent has purchased a new machine that will allow them to reduce the size of the contracts. We found no history of prior complaints in this case, and we're recommending a consent order with a $250 civil penalty and authorization for a hearing.
It's a new business.
Not a new business, it's a business that's gone through a name change in the past few months.
Motion to accept council's recommendation.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Taylor, seconded by Mr. Neal to accept council's recommendations. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Number 8 is case 2013-018-111. On August 15th, 2013, a field representative conducted a routine inspection of the respondent establishment. The latest inspection report for the crematory utilized by this establishment was not available for inspection. Also, the ventilation fan in the preparation room was not working properly. On the general price list under direct cremation, the high-end range on the casket price list was inconsistent with the general price list. Also on the general price list under direct cremation with casket selected from our funeral home, the high-end range was inconsistent with the casket price list. Also, the statement of funeral goods and services selected on one contract, the family was overcharged $300 for the Doric Titan outer burial container. On the unit being offered to the consumer in the selection room, the Doric Titan was priced at $1,595. However, on the statement of funeral goods and services selected, the price charged was $1,895. In response, a current inspection report for the crematory was obtained while the inspector was present. Also, the ventilation fan in the preparation room was repaired and is now in working order. Under the general price list, the necessary changes were made to the general price list while the inspector was present. Also, the statement of funeral goods and services selected upon review of the file by the funeral director in charge of the arrangements, it was found that the price discrepancy was due to the deceased needing an oversized vault in this case. We found a history of 5 closed complaints, and we're recommending a consent order with a $250 civil penalty and authorization for a hearing.
Make a motion, we accept council's recommendation.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Neal, seconded by Mr. Hinkle to accept council's recommendations. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Number 9 is case 2013018-191. On July 11th, 2013, the complainant's father passed away at a local hospital, and the complainant's brother, as executor, gave the name of the respondent establishment to the morgue with the idea that they would give final approval to the morgue, releasing the decedent's body to any establishment. The complainant and siblings then went to the respondent funeral establishment to discuss options. The complainant explained that their father had no insurance, but his wishes were to be cremated. However, they needed to speak to their stepmother, who left the decedent 10 to 15 years prior, but was still legally married to their father. The complainant and her family continued looking for their stepmother and informed the morgue that they had yet to make up their mind on a funeral home. The family chose a different establishment than the respondent and contacted the morgue to inform them of this decision. However, the complainant found that the body had already been released to the respondent establishment. The complainant stated that the manager of the respondent establishment became enraged when they called to inform him that they were choosing a different establishment. The respondent informed the complainant that one sibling gave him permission to go ahead and embalm the body, but the sibling denied ever speaking with the manager. Furthermore, the manager stated that a person by the name of Shelley called him and told him to remove the body from the morgue, but no one by that name worked at the morgue. The complainant was able to reach their stepmother, who stated that the respondent obtained her permission to remove the body. When the family went to the respondent to take possession of the body, the respondent stated that they wanted to be paid for embalming the body, but no one ever gave him permission to embalm the body, according to the complainant. The family was not allowed to view the body for identification purposes, and the decedent's sister wired the money the next day to pay the respondent for his services. The funeral services were held at the chosen funeral establishment on July 20th, 2013, without the decedent's body, and the family did not receive the cremains until August 5th, 2013. The cremains were then given to the complainant's stepmother, and the complainant and family paid for the funeral services rendered. In response, the respondent heard from the complainant's sister, who retained the services of the respondent funeral establishment. The hospital contacted the respondent regarding making a removal from the hospital. The respondent then received a phone call from another sibling about changing the services to another funeral establishment. Then the respondent asked what the family would like to do, as he had already removed and embalmed the decedent's body per the sister's request. Respondent spoke with the sibling and had her admit that the family had come in to check the respondent's prices and then went to the second funeral home to check their prices as well. The respondent then contacted the second funeral home and spoke to the manager, who confirmed that the family came by to check prices, but there was also a stepmother involved, which the respondent was not aware of the stepmother's involvement. The respondent then informed the other manager that he had the body at his establishment, and the second manager stated that he was not aware of the location of the decedent's body. The stepmother then contacted the respondent, and the respondent asked her how she knew about the body's location at the establishment, as the family acted like they could not ever reach her. And the stepmother then explained that they knew where she was and that her son informed her of the need to contact the respondent establishment for final arrangements. She came in the next day and made final arrangements for the decedent. The respondent explained that the family requested the body be moved to the second funeral establishment, but the stepmother and decedent's sister both stated that it makes no sense to move the body and that they would like to leave the body with the respondent, at which point the decedent's sister paid for the services. The complainant and other family members never came back to the respondent establishment to identify the body or to make any payment. We found a history of 12 prior closed complaints in this case, and we are recommending that this one be dismissed.
Make a recommendation, we accept counsel.
Second.
Motion has been made by Mr. Starkey, seconded by Mr. Hinkle, to accept council's recommendation to dismiss. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Number 10 is case 2013018381. On July 27, 2013, the complainant and a group of friends met with two representatives of the respondent establishment, that being at the request of the representatives to discuss the importance of pre-planning a funeral and as an opportunity to present the services of the respondent funeral establishment. In this case, more than 20 people were present for this presentation. The representatives gave a presentation focusing on the need for pre-need planning, and questions were asked by those in attendance. Afterwards, complainants were requested to sign up for a home visit from either individual to go over their planning guide. At no time at the meeting were they given a price list. Direct questions were asked, but none of them were answered. They were told that cremation is about half the cost of a traditional funeral. And when pressed for an answer, they finally answered that a traditional funeral costs more than $10,000. No real prices were ever given, and the complainant states that those who had follow-up meetings told him that they had never received a price list during those meetings. One friend stated that one representative scolded them for selecting a less expensive service. In response, the respondent states that the seminar was a general presentation focused on the benefits of pre-planning. Specific prices and price lists were not discussed during the seminar. However, price lists were available next to the seminar sign-in sheet in the event that the attendee was interested in the information. At the end of the seminar, during the question and answer period, if an individual inquired about the specific prices for funeral arrangements, the funeral home offered to schedule separate appointments with those individuals, and price lists were provided at the beginning of those scheduled appointments prior to the commencement of the funeral arrangement discussion. In this case, we found a history of 4 closed complaints, and we're recommending a consent order with a $250 civil penalty and authorization for a hearing.
What's basically the $250 civil penalty for?
For not providing price list at the time that they should have.
Well, if they were available for anybody that wanted to discuss price, I can't see why there would be a $250. It seems to me like everything's in compliance here.
Well, I think, we thought that they should have made more of an effort to actually hand out the price list rather than just saying that, they didn't even tell anyone that they were available at the front. They just had them at the front of some station that they had up there for the handout. So we believe that based on that, they should have made an effort to actually provide those price lists to them instead of just making them available at the front.
They answered that a traditional funeral costs more than $10,000, so they did attempt to make some kind of price offering. More than, less than. I mean, that's.
Well, you weren't discussing specific funeral, just, a funeral. I mean, that's a general term. You could hear that on TV, on advertisements from insurance companies. I don't think that triggers the price list. In my own self, I can't see that he did anything wrong here.
Mr. President, we went back and looked at the funeral rule on the Federal Trade Commission website and looked at it. It's not like they came to the funeral home, but the funeral rule is very clear that it's for the benefit of the consumer. That when there's a question about price, that triggers. If it were in the funeral home, at least it would trigger the giving of the price list.
Yeah. I can't see in a seminar. I think you got to look at the whole broad picture here. I mean, this is a seminar talking to senior citizens group. I've never heard of, generalized questions or answer. I've been to seminars many a times, and I guess I'll admit my own guilt. I've been to ones we presented in group funeral homes. I've never seen a general price list passed out of one of those. Generalized questions or ask, I think it's just stretching here a little bit.
And then we looked at the funeral rule requires that if you're making a first call or a removal and you're asked for price information, the rule goes so far as to say you should have your general price list in the vehicle with you.
We do that.
So it's obviously for the board's discretion to do what you think's best. It's an unusual situation that the complaint would be submitted based on the scenario that it was presented in, but then when you look at the whole rule, we discussed it and talked about it, and that is the council's recommendation to you. And again, it's the board's discretion to do what you wish and what you think's best for the complaint.
Motion to accept council's recommendation. I'll get it started.
Motion on the floor to accept council's recommendation. Does the chair hear a second? Hearing none, motion fails for lack of a second. Is there any further discussion?
I make a motion that we drop would it be the fine or
Civil
the
penalty.
penalty?
Letter of warning.
Motion
I make a motion we dismiss.
Motion made by Mr. Starkey to dismiss. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Sower. Any further discussion? The motion's been made to dismiss and it's been properly seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Roll call vote, Ms. Johnson, please.
Wayne Hinkle,
Yes.
Tony Highsmith.
Yes.
David Neal,
Yes.
Jane Graysow,
No, yes, excuse me.
Robert Starkey,
Yes.
Anita Taylor,
No.
Motion passes. Mr. Council, number 11, please.
Number 11 is case 2013018-391.
Let me interrupt just a second, Mr. Council. And that motion by roll call vote is to dismiss, and that's what was approved.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Council, number 11.
Number 11 is case 2013018-391. The complainant's father-in-law recently passed away, and the family is trying to find a pre-need arrangement that was made between the decedent and the respondent. The complainant provided a copy of the contract signed in 1977. They agreed to purchase a pre-need funeral package from the respondent for $1,595, payable over time through Harpeth Bank. Additionally, on that day from respondent, they purchased the grave markers for $1,093.23. Both contracts were paid to the Harpeth National Bank of Franklin, Tennessee. However, Harpeth was then sold to First Tennessee Bank. The contract states that an irrevocable perpetual care and maintenance trust fund, which was set up through Harpeth Bank, and also the first contract for the grave markers was to have payments begin on February 1st, 1978 for 60 months for a payment of $18.22 per month. The second contract for pre-need funeral service for $1,595 with payments of $26.58 for 60 months was to begin on March 1st, 1983. The decedent received a paid note document on their purchase of the grave markers on December 24th, 1982 from First Tennessee Bank. However, they never received a paid document for the payments sent for the pre-need funeral services payments sent in the amount of $26.58 each month because it was not a note but a trust fund. The mother-in-law and father-in-law both claim that they paid off their pre-need contracts. Unfortunately, the father-in-law passed away in April of 2013, and the funeral home was since bought out and cannot find the paperwork other than the contracts in the file. The parents have signed a contract to provide the funeral services, and they will not honor the agreement unless the mother can prove that they made their payments for these services over 35 years ago. The complainant states that they cannot find any canceled checks or other documentation, but states that the money should have been left in trust to accrue interest during this time. In response, according to the purchase agreement for markers, payments were to be made for 60 months from February 1978 to March 1983. According to the note included with the complaint, the markers were paid in full. After payment was made in full for the markers, they were to begin making payments on the pre-need contract. The funeral home finds no record of payments being made by the parents for the funding of the pre-need contract. It also seems that the mother is unable to locate any documentation, such as a note similar to the one pertaining to the markers, stating that the pre-need contract was paid in full, or any canceled checks establishing payments made to the pre-need contract. The funeral home is unable to honor the pre-need contract without confirmation that the pre-need contract was fully funded. And if they were able to produce any documentation to reflect payment, respondent states that they will be happy to review the documentation. We found a history of 7 closed complaints in this case, and we're recommending that this case be closed.
Bank has no record. There are no records at the
Not to my knowledge, no.
of there ever even being a contract with this.
Well, both parties have copies of the contracts, but there was
Nothing at the bank.
nothing to show that any money was deposited or anything of that nature.
Make a motion, we accept council recommendation.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Neal, second by Ms. Sowell to accept council's recommendation. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Number 12 is case 2011028452. On October 19th, 2011, a field representative conducted a routine examination of the respondent establishment. The field representative determined that an embalmed body had fallen below the standard of care for the embalming of the body. The body of Barbara Wright had been embalmed, and the viscera were separate from the body in a sealed Dodge chemical box and placed at the decedent's feet. Furthermore, the soiled clothing of the decedent was placed in a biohazard bag and placed at the decedent's feet as well. In response, respondent states that this establishment has never come under such allegations. The embalmed remains were brought to the establishment by an embalmer, and the viscera were treated with 2 bottles of cavity fluid, sealed in 2 plastic bags, and placed in a cardboard box and sealed with clear postal tape. The decedent's name was clearly written on the box, and it was identified as viscera. Respondent states that they are innocent until proven guilty, and their typical embalmer was told that this practice was not out of the ordinary and included text, including the embalming history, theory, and practice used by John Gupton to teach students proper placement of viscera, and 1, placed within the body, or 2, prepared and placed in a separate container with the body in the casket or shipping case. Respondent states that they spoke with a Dodge Chemical Company representative who stated that this can be used for placement of viscera and viscera that is swollen or other reasons. As for the clothes being placed in a biohazard bag with the body, respondent states that they have never instructed any authorized employee to place biohazard bags with the personal clothing at the foot of a casket. These were the personal belongings of the decedent, and the field representative never opened the bag of clothes to determine the condition of the clothes. Respondent states that they are not aware of any decision that the placement of personal belongings or treated viscera at the foot of the casket is unethical. In recommendation, this matter was previously presented during the March 2012 board meeting. While council believes that there is a likelihood of a violation based upon these facts, the pending funeral board rules pertaining to professional standards would address the violations in a clear and more concise manner. Therefore, we are recommending that this case now be closed.
I remember this. What was the disposition of that complaint?
I believe in this situation, we believe the board
There
recommended.
were other things involved with it.
Right, there were other. This actual complaint included 4 respondents, and in this particular matter, a civil penalty of $250 was recommended by the board was accepted by the board.
This particular establishment was not where the incident occurred. At the primary establishment where the incident occurred, they've signed a consent order and paid a civil penalty. There was a letter of warning issued against the funeral director and the embalmer involved, and this is the employer of the funeral director and embalmer at the second establishment. Basically, the primary establishment made a trade embalming arrangement with the embalmer from another establishment. So this is the
Who's the
second.
respondent?
We can't provide that information.
Well, the name.
It's a funeral establishment.
Funeral establishment.
Who had an employee who was the embalmer in the case. The embalming did not occur.
Trade embalmer.
Yes, ma'am. The embalming did not occur at this establishment. We had it, the case has, or the complaint had 4 respondents. The primary funeral establishment who was in charge of the arrangements where the field representative made the inspection. The funeral director was the individual who had a funeral director's license was the second respondent. The individual who had an embalmer's license, which is the same individual, was a third respondent. And the funeral home where the individual worked was the 4th respondent. Correct, Ms. Mosby? If it's not, straighten me out.
First respondent was the funeral establishment that it happened at. The second respondent was the funeral establishment where the funeral director and embalmer worked. And then the third and fourth was the funeral director and the embalmer. So.
Okay, so this is the second. This is the second one. It's not but it's not the primary place where the incident occurred. And this, if the board accepted the council's recommendation, this would conclude that complete complaint and those 4 cases.
Motion to accept council's recommendation.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Hinkle, seconded by Mrs. Taylor, to accept council's recommendation that this matter be closed. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Council, does that conclude your report?
Yes, sir, Mr. President.
Thank you. Chair will now recognize Mr. Robert Gribble, Executive Director, for his administrative matters report.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first matter on the agenda, I think we pretty well covered before the Assistant Commissioner and his assistant came, the one regarding revenue and expenditures for fiscal year 12 and 13. If any board member has a question about that, I'll be glad to answer it, but I think we pretty well covered that. Licensee report. The report of license is administratively approved by the Executive Director pursuant to the Board's authority for the period of October 8, 2012 through October 8, 2013 through November 11, 2013. Have 2 establishments, one a new establishment in Kingsport, Tennessee, and a location change for an establishment in Bolivar, Tennessee. And then the individuals who received either funeral director or an embalmer or funeral director or embalmer license, and where they received that initially or on a reapplication, you have a list of those. As far as closed establishment report, there is 1 establishment reported closing since the last board meeting. That's J.O. Patterson Mortuary at 2944 Walnut Grove Road in Memphis, Tennessee. Disciplinary action report, we do not have any, we have no consent orders, so we have no disciplinary action report for October the 1st through the end of October of 2013. As far as open complaints, you have in front of you there that there are 122 open complaints, 9 of those being against funeral directors and embalmers, and 113 of them being against funeral establishments, for a total of 122. That was as of November the 8th, 2013. Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Motion to accept Mr. Gribble's executive report regarding administrative matters.
So moved.
Hearing multiple first, is there a second? First by Mrs. Sowell, seconded by Mrs. Taylor. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Gribble, are there any individuals or establishments to appear today?
There are no individuals or no establishments to appear before the board for licensure matters.
Thank you, Mr. Gribble. Next item on the agenda is discussion of possible rules, Public Chapter 437, Removal Service Registration. Mr. Gribble, the chair will yield to you. Or do we need to?
Mr. McDonough is going to take care of that
Okay.
matter, I think.
Chair then recognizes council.
The board members, up in the top left-hand corner of your shelf, you have a copy of Public Chapter 437 if you want to look at that. The Removal Service Registration Law.
As the board will recall, we previously had I guess a work session that involved discussions about possible rules regarding the removal service bill, and I'm happy to report that we have been working on those rules, and we have will provide the board with those rules at the next December board meeting, and basically what we need today is approval by the board to hold the emergency rulemaking hearing, which will be at the next board meeting in December.
Is this the rule where we ask for the Attorney General's opinion?
Yes, sir, and we have also
Have we received that?
we have been working on that as well, and we're waiting on final approval from the department to provide that to the board and then send it up to the Attorney General's office to obtain the Attorney General's opinion on this particular law involving removal service companies.
I thought we'd already requested the Attorney General's opinion on that.
Well, we have, but we still have to go through the procedure of getting approval from the department, and then the president will have to sign off on the letter, and then at that point, then it will be sent up to the Attorney General's office for their opinion.
Will you have this back by next month?
The letter will be ready to be signed
By next month.
by next month. Yes.
It's been several months since we asked for that opinion, has it not been? What has been the delay in getting the Attorney General's? Seemed like we did that yeah.
Well, I can tell you that, I mean, there is a lot of procedure that we have to go through before we can send it up to the Attorney General's office, and we have been working on the matter. I mean, we have to get approval from the department first before we present it to the board, and then at that point, we'll send it up to the Attorney General's office at that point.
So will we have the emergency rulemaking session without the Attorney General's opinion?
We will, but whether or not we have the Attorney General's opinion back at that point, it will not impact the rulemaking process. Basically, what we're asking from the Attorney General is whether or not, which individuals the law will apply to. So that's separate from actually holding the emergency rulemaking hearing to set the levels for the fees and also for the insurance that's required. So those are two totally separate issues.
But if in the emergency rulemaking hearing, if we set the fees, how are we going to know who to assess those fees to without the Attorney General's opinion? I guess is my question.
Well, as I just stated, I mean, they're two separate issues. I mean, you can set the fees, but once we get the Attorney General's opinion back, then we'll know against, which individuals the fee will be assessed.
That'll be after the first of the year, though.
I can't say for sure what the timetable is on the Attorney General's opinion.
Rule set to go into effect January 1, right?
Supposed to. There's no way they'll have that back by January. It's been 3 months.
What we'd like to do, if possible, is the board do the emergency rules at the next meeting, which I think will be December the 10th. And then subsequent to that, we'll have the application and the application information on the website so that the people who are subject to the law will be able to apply and have their application turned in sometime between December the 15th and December the 31st, and then we can start approving them after the first of the year. I think legal has told us that we must wait till January the 1st or later to be able to approve any applicant. And in the discussion we had with them the other day, with legal, it was pretty much the conclusion. I think, Mr. McDonough, if I mistake this, correct me, but each individual will need to look at their situation and determine whether or not they should or should not register. Of course, the confusion is, as we've all talked about, is whether or not if a funeral director who owns a removal service, a funeral director and embalmer, is that removal service exempt from registration. And it was pointed out the other day that lots of times a removal service will be operated as a corporation or a limited liability company, which doesn't mean that the funeral director owns that entity. So, but in the meantime, I guess each individual will need to look at their own situation, their own circumstances. And we've been getting calls about it, and what we've told them is, the board will do a rulemaking hearing, and the applications will be out there, and the fees will be set, and prior to January the 1st, you can apply for your removal registration, and then it can. Mr. McDonough said probably the three main things is for the board to decide is the initial fee, the renewal fee, and the amount of the insurance. Would be the three main things for the board to decide.
We would do that at the next board meeting, emergency
Right.
meeting.
Assuming that you all approve that.
Okay. Motion to,
So
wait a minute, I'm sorry, Tony.
we are to approve as presented, as printed here today? Is that correct?
You're just supposed to give us approval for the emergency rulemaking hearing on during the next meeting.
We're not-
Right, not the
We're not discussing the rule.
Not the rules.
Just the authorization for the,
Emergency meeting next month.
right, okay.
Motion on the emergency meeting next month.
Proceed with that. Motion been made by Mr. Hinkle to proceed.
Second.
Second, Mr. Starkey. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Board members, is there any other items to come before the board today?
Will there be an opportunity to comment on this proposed rule?
That's what the hearing will be for.
That will be about
Only
that.
on the fees, because we've already had opportunity.
I'm talking about the wording of the rule that's present.
Just for the fees that we're talking about, the rulemaking is going to pertain to the fees and the insurance.
The fee you're mean is the fee for the application applying for designation or licensing as a removal service.
That's correct.
So in essence, it will be a license.
It'll be a
My
actually.
understanding before that it was not.
It will not be a license. No, it'll be in this case.
What will it be
It'll
if
be
you're
a
charging a
registration.
fee for it?
It'll be a registration.
Just to register as a removal service?
Right.
No permit issued or anything like
Just
that?
a registration.
Any other discussion? Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Neal, seconded by Mr. Hinkle. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.